The Blue Flash is arguably the most famous backyard roller coaster in the world. Located in Bruceville, Indiana, the Blue Flash was built by John Ivers in his own backyard. It was such a success, he even built a follow-up coaster in the Blue 2. With the recent news that John Ivers is no longer going to operate his coasters, credit to Coolest Thing, I decided it would be a good time to share my thoughts on the Blue Flash. The Blue Flash is one of the most mysterious coasters in the world. Coasters in the middle of nowhere don't get a lot of coverage. That's especially true when that coaster is in the middle of nowhere in someone's backyard. But every few years, a viral video or quick report of the Blue Flash does surface. Because of its uniqueness, it was a bucket list coaster for me. I'm sure most of us have dreamed of having a coaster in our backyard, but John Ivers made that a reality. I was fortunate enough to have ridden the Blue Flash in May of 2019, a few hours before going to Holiday World. And the process to ride the Blue Flash actually began months, yes months, in advance. Since I knew I'd be attending Hollywood Nights, I started looking into how to contact John and ride the Blue Flash. This goes without saying, but you cannot just show up unannounced. This is a man's house. And believe it or not, this has been an issue in the past. John has had coaster enthusiasts show up unannounced and sometimes ask to ride. Other times, they're just there to take photos. That's really rude and very creepy. For reasons that are totally understandable, John does not list his phone number or email address publicly. So I had a predicament. How do I reach him? I had to think outside the box. Specifically, I had to think retro. I went with a letter. John's address was listed online. Heck, the road he lives on is named after him. It seemed like a Hail Mary attempt, but it was my only option. This was probably the first letter I had mailed in years, and much to my shock, John reached out to me a week later and we set up a time months down the road. Flash forward to May 2019 and I arrived at John's property. There, I was greeted by John, his wife Sharon, and their cat, and they couldn't have been nicer. It was the first time I ever met them, but they were extremely welcoming and excited to see someone interested in their backyard creation. Before riding the Blue Flash, I essentially got a VIP tour from John. It's rare to get this close to a coaster, and exceedingly rare to be able to talk to the designer and manufacturer. He went into detail how the Blue Flash and Blue 2 coaster came to be. As a roller coaster enthusiast and also an engineer, it was fascinating. John himself actually isn't an engineer, and he will be the first to admit it. The coaster was a lot of trial and error. However, John has extensive hands-on experience, including welding, from his job. In fact, his job is how he was able to procure the scrap steel used to construct the Blue Flash. From our discussion, you could tell he meticulously cares for his coasters, and he does everything possible to make sure it's safe for people to ride. He also went into full details how his coasters tick. The most fascinating thing to me was the car. It looks like a wagon with a car seat slapped on top of it. As for the restraints, you only have a seatbelt that was actually repurposed from a former bulldozer. I cannot stress this enough, but you had to hold on when you rode the Blue Flash because it was a wild ride. Now, the Blue Flash was only 20 to 25 feet tall, but it was one of the most imposing coasters out there. For one, it literally climbed over his shed. What other coaster does that? 2, it had arguably the world's most compact inversion. It just looked wrong. 3, there's the element of the unknown. After riding a few coasters from a manufacturer, you have an idea how their subsequent coasters may ride. For the Blue Flash, I had zero idea what kind of forces or how well this ride would track. Would it be smooth? Would it be rough? Would there be airtime? Would there be forces? I had no clue, and that's what made it so exciting. On to the ride. The first drop is wicked. It packs a serious punch. Again, it's only 20-25 feet tall, but it's steeper than it looks and it twists to the side. It felt like a more compact version of the first drop on Phantom's Revenge or Blackpool's Big One. That's followed by the pullout from the first drop, which is easily the most intense part of the ride. Heck, it's one of the most intense parts of any coaster. As the Blue Flash uncorks into the straightaway, the transition is so fast that it's borderline violent. The lateral forces will want to throw you from the train. Had I not been holding on, I honestly have no clue where my upper body would have gone. Then comes the signature loop. As I said earlier, this has to be the smallest inversion in existence. Not only does it pack on the G's, but it just feels weird. It felt like I was performing a backflip. I'm pretty sure your head stays in the same spot during the inversion as your body rotates around it. It's so weird that I loved it. Keep in mind, everything I've described up to this point takes place in less than 3 seconds, but it's arguably 3 of the craziest seconds of any coaster out there. I'm glad John gave me 3 rides in total because I needed to experience it a few times to fully comprehend what just happened. The finale of Blue Flash is nothing special. It finishes by crossing over the loading area and going through a small helix. This is taken very slowly. In fact, it felt like I was going to valley on every ride. Unlike most coasters with brakes, the Blue Flash has none. For my second and third rides, John just had the train blow right through the load area and continue up the lift. The way John actually brakes the coaster is simple. He just turns off the lift motor and you roll back to the load area. The Blue Flash may be short, but it is a very wild ride. The Blue Flash is certainly rough around the edges. I mean, it's a backyard coaster. But that's what gives this ride character. As a coaster alone, the Blue Flash is a 7 out of 10. And that's an incredible score for something located in a man's backyard. That's saying that this coaster can compete with some of the rides in the lineup of a Six Flags or Cedar Fair park. However, the Blue Flash needs to be evaluated as an experience. In that regard, the Blue Flash is an easy 10 out of 10. Riding the Blue Flash was unforgettable, but also being able to meet its designer and learn how the legendary coaster ticks is priceless. Thanks again for John and his family for allowing me the opportunity to ride the Blue Flash. It's an experience I will always remember. The Blue Flash may be retired, but its memory will live on from the few enthusiasts who are lucky enough to ride it. Were you able to ride the Blue Flash? I'd love to hear your personal experience or thoughts on the ride below. Thanks for listening.